What's going on, everybody? Donnie Rouse here, and today I wanted to touch on that reoccurring feeling that maybe you are repeating the same mistakes in life over and over, or that the same things keep showing up. What I found in my own life is that often when I feel like these same things keep showing up, it's often because I didn't acknowledge the lesson that I've already learned and moved on from. And as a result of not acknowledging that lesson, I tend to feel the emotions that I didn't move on when indeed I have. So when you think of an experience that you have in life that seems kind of reoccurring, it could be maybe dating the wrong person or having an experience with your business or at your work. And as I go through the story, I just want you to listen to the realizations that I had in my own life to see how they apply to yours, because I have a feeling that maybe some of the things that ways of thinking that I was going through, and you're probably doing the same thing. So without further ado, early on in my business, I remember I was sharing this is the backstory of it. So early on in my business, I remember sharing details about my business with somebody, and in this regard, it was with my my purpose, which was Change for Coffee. And I remember talking to a guy, sharing all the things that I was excited about, only to find out when I went to buy the domain of my philanthropic part of my business that the domain was already taken. When I saw this, I was like, what the hell? Who was it? So I looked to see who owned it, and it turned out it was this person that I had spoken to. As you can imagine, this really, really burned me because I felt betrayed. I'm like, this person had my trust, and then they not only stole like the idea or the phrase for my philanthropic arm, they also like bought my name as a domain. But thankfully, this was all resolved rather quickly because my friend was his IT person, saw it, went in, reversed it, and said, I know this is rightfully yours. I'm going to reverse it, and don't worry about it. So that left kind of like a little scar on me, right? Now it made me hypersensitive to areas where there was the possibility where some creative or intellectual property of mine might get taken. So fast forward now, I'm working on expanding my beverage business, and I'm working with different companies, a formulator. And I had conversations with this one formulator, and I was feeling really, really, really good about this company. We had several calls, and then I had a call with their formulator. We had executed an NDA. And then after the NDA, they're like, all right, well, send us samples at the different stages within your production process. Send the samples. We'll start matching, the different compositions, and we'll go from there. When I hung up the phone, I was getting excited. I was like, all right, I can't wait to get going. I'm actually going to be doing brewing, the following day. I could have all these done and sent out this week. But then something happened, right? In my gut, I was like, wait a minute, something's not right. Like something didn't feel right to me. And I was like, well, what is it? And I said, there's no working agreement. Like we have an NDA, but there's nothing stating that they work for hire, meaning any work that they do on my behalf is my property, my intellectual property, part of my formulation. So I reached out for this company. I said, hey, I got your request, but I'm not going to send anything yet because we don't have a working agreement, and I want to make sure that all of my intellectual property, my recipes are protected. I got an email from this person, this formulator, saying, oh, don't worry, the NDA covers all of that, right? Just send the product out and we'll get working on it right away, right? And in my mind, it almost felt like I was being gaslighted because I'm like, what are you, dumb? Like, of course it's not covered. And then I was starting to get really bothered by this, right? Because I was starting to tell myself the story like, oh my God, here we go. Everybody is out to take advantage of you, right? Which is a shitty story. Not everybody's like that, right? There are some really shitty people out in the world who will try to prey on earlier businesses for their own benefit. So I had a feeling, and I was like, I'm still not going to send anything. So I contacted several of people who I admired and looked up to in that industry. And I heard from one of them. One was actually recommended by this company. And the guy said, well, he was telling me like one, basically how they wanted to run the test. He's like, this is stupid. He's like, you're going to be spending so much money that you don't have to spend before you actually arrive at the right formula. It would be idiotic to do it that way. Then when I told him about the formulation, he's like, well, he left it off with this. And the way he left it off gave me a red flag. He goes, before you do anything, just make sure up front that you know who owns the formula, that you own the formula. And he put a little bit of, I noticed some emphasis on this, which was like, I'm like, oh God, this seems to be probably a pattern of this company. Bad enough when they were, where they were talking about the charge for like, no, this is not our core business. Our core business is doing X, Y, and Z. This is like a service we offer. I'm like, bullshit. Nothing is for free, right? You're not going to formulate someone's beverage for free, which would normally cost maybe tens of thousands, and say, yeah, that's fine. No charge. No, that means that they would own the formulation. So privy to this, and there's only two options, right? It's either one, they were negligent and just not knowing, right? Which is possible. Or two, they had malicious intent. I am going to try to err on the side of they were negligent, which is likely not the case, but I'll try to look at the bright side of it, right? Rather than accuse them, because they are working in the industry. Their company is an international company, so they damn well know that any formulation needs to be documented as property of the original formulator. Otherwise, it belongs to them. So I had to make the decision what to do next. So while this is happening, like the 2 weeks I'm going by back and forth in email, I'm like going through I'm like spiraling. I'm like, oh my God, like, why does this always happen to me? Like, why do every time I feel like I'm taking a step forward, I'm taking a step back? And I started to tell myself this shitty story. And then I realized, as I'd been asking recently, I'd been asking a lot more empowering questions. I was like, no, this is not, what is great about this? Or said differently, how is this moving me forward? Or how is this happening for me? Prior to working or talking with this company, I did not know how I was going to go into the production, meaning which production process I was going to use for my beverage. So it gave me clarity in that. Secondly, we talked about a bunch of different companies who would be I could look to with regard to sourcing ingredients. So I had a whole list of new companies. And thirdly, this company put me in contact with someone I hold as very high regard, right? But I will still back that up with contracts. But I still put me in touch with this person who acted with ethically in telling me and giving me a warning sign, although he didn't come out and just say it direct. He indirectly gave me a warning, which I completely am grateful for. Not that I didn't see the writing on the wall. So when I looked at this, right, and I was thinking to myself, like, all right, well, is this really happening again? Am I standing still? Absolutely not. Because, it's the constantly moving forward and like making new distinctions, right? It would be stupid for me to feel bad about doing business someone that I wasn't meant to do business with, right? Like that for me is I want to work with people who have integrity. And once that trust is violated, then it's a no-go, right? So why would I get upset about somebody showing me who they really are and not doing business with someone who's not in alignment with how my values and just being a trustworthy person? But we tell ourselves that story all the time, don't we? We tell ourselves a lie that we are not moving forward when indeed we are moving forward, and this is just a step in that direction. When I think of courage is knowing what the step to take and taking it regardless of the fear behind it. The entire time, I can't even tell you how much, when I think of the tasks that I'm required to make or take before moving forward, like I think 100% of them I am nervous to take because they're all these new actions and there could be all these ramifications, but I take the action to the best of my ability, trying to get input from people who are more knowledgeable than me. But the key again is that I keep taking the steps forward and I acknowledge when I feel things are off. So you could look at that first experience I had, right? With the first experience with the guy who was trying to steal my domains and like my philanthropic cause, right? You could be like, well, that was the first experience. And the second experience wasn't life repeating itself. It was me taking the lessons I learned from that experience and then applying it to this new experience that I'm now in. I'm going to tell you one more story, and it's a story about a friend of mine. I will not name this person. But they were in an abusive relationship. At the time, they were in it because they thought the person could change. And maybe I would go to so far as to say that they didn't have the confidence to really stand up for themselves. As a result of that relationship, it ended up crumbling. And as a result of this, though, this person grew, I know, not balls, but they just got more self-confident and they were more vocal with their own needs, desires, and how they wanted to be treated. Fast forward, they are in a new relationship, and now this relationship seemed to be perfect. But then there started to show some cracks. And once those cracks were shown, this person saw it as the warning sign. So I'm being very vague. I want to protect this person's privacy. And they ended the relationship. But were worried that they were just repeating, like life was repeating itself over, when in fact, they learned the lesson, right? They learned the lesson and they move forward. Things are not always going to be for you. And that's okay. And you may hurt, which is also okay. Right? Like I was stressing out about this company who I knew was not the right fit for me. I was just so annoyed to think like not everybody has the trustworthiness that I myself would respond if I were working with somebody. But that doesn't mean that I'm repeating the same thing over. And it doesn't mean that I can't feel the stressors or the pain of having gone through that experience. So the truth is that this person grew, well beyond they will give themselves credit for. And they're continuing to move forward because like love, like business, you have to keep at it, right? It's not something that's just going to come one day and it's going to be perfect. It takes constant work. So with that, I want to draw on some of the lessons there. Like one is just asking yourself a better question. Like, how is this happening for me, right? You might be in that position where someone was taking advantage of you. Like, how did it happen for you? Why is it happening for you? Maybe the fact that this person, it happened. Now you learned a lesson where something more valuable down the line, you're going to be able to protect yourself because now you have the wherewithal to say, you know what? I need to protect this with contracts. And then secondly, when you look at the experience, what are you learning from that new experience? It's very, very likely that you are not picking up the lessons that you've already learned and already are implementing, but because you don't feel like you've learned anything and life is repeating, you revert back to that original state. What is the lesson you're learning? How have you grown? So much of the improvements in our life can be summed up in the questions we ask ourselves. And lastly, I want you to just be aware of the thinking, like the questions you were, going back to the questions you were constantly asking yourself. I'm reading this book. I'm going to blank on the name, but he uses automatic negative thoughts, what he calls ants, as things that just because you've had the habit of asking them over and over and over, your mind just goes there first thing. One of those things for me was the, I think it's all or nothing, I think was the name of the ant. And the all or nothing means like, oh, this happened there now. Like if this happened, it means I'm ruined. Or if this happened, it means that it's never going to happen for me. Kind of one of the things I was telling my business, but when I stop and I look at it and I question the automatic thought, I'm like, well, all right, Does this mean that it's a step backwards? Does this mean it's never going to happen? Is that true? Well, no. I mean, there are thousands of, probably tens of thousands of people who do formulation who can help me that I could turn to. How do I feel when I believe that this is, that this has set me back? I don't feel like doing much of anything, to be honest with you. If anything, it kind of stifles me. It prevents me from taking action forward. And then the last thing you want to ask yourself is, what happens if you just flip it on its head, right? If you say, instead of this is stopping me, this is meant to propel me forward. Well, and that's actually the truth, right? If I'm looking at my own case, how is this propelling me forward? If I believe the reciprocal, what would that add to my life? Well, if I believe this was happening for me, if I believe that this is just the beginning, I would take bigger action because now I'm prepared. I experienced this. I know that I need to get a guide to guide me along this process. And I know everything, regardless of how trustworthy the person seems. I need to back it up with contracts, right? I need to make sure every single detail is gone. And when I have any kind of question before engaging in any agreement, having another person or third party look at that agreement who has a little bit of distance from it to ask the questions to make sure that it is the right, like everything is in order to move forward. Questions are what create momentum or lack thereof that make you feel like you were moving forward or make you feel like you were stuck. The quality of your life comes down to the quality of your questions. This is, I think many people have said this, but I picked that one up from Tony Robbins when I had gone to one of his seminars. So in closing, when you revisit that thing, when you think that life is repeating yourself, ask yourself a better question. Is it really life repeating itself? Are you really stuck? No, the very fact that you have the awareness to think that it is, see that maybe there's a pattern reoccurring means you're already started breaking the pattern. You're already on your way, right? Acknowledge that. Because if you weren't aware of that pattern, you would not even be questioning this. You would still be sulking in, why has this always happened to me? You wouldn't even question it. So the very fact that you are seeing the pattern means that you are moving beyond it. I'll give you one kind of last little short story that exhibits how change happens. So the guy was at his car and he was changed his blinker light, but he wanted to make sure that the light was working. So he went to the driver's seat, told his wife, hey, go to the back of the car and I'm going to turn the blinker light on. I just want you to tell me when the blinker is working, okay? Sure thing. Okay. All right, let me go to the car. He turns the car on, puts the blinker on. And he hears his wife saying, it's working. Now it's not. It's working. Now it's not. It's working. It's now not. He stops and he goes, what the hell are you doing? She goes, well, it keeps going on and off. He goes, of course, because it's supposed to go on and off. That's how you know it is working. Meaning, when you see and you are aware of those patterns that were habitually and you didn't even question, that means now you are stepping in the power to break them. When you don't notice it, then you don't notice. So without awareness, nothing changes. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this, this was actually one of the big stressors for the last couple of weeks for me. If you see me at the market, if you noticed that I was feeling a little off, it was just because I've been juggling all of the emotions from this, because now I have a call where I'm going to be confronting them intentionally. I could easily just send them a letter, right, from me copying my lawyer and saying, hey, please destroy all the documents from our meeting and see you later. But instead, I am choosing to confront them via video call and to assert, my just step into it and be more assertive, because in the past I would have shied away from that. But I'm like, you know what? No, as the CEO of Rouse Coffee Company, this is a role I must step into and live. So I'm going to tell them what my expectation was, how they broke my expectation or did not meet my expectation, and that the agreement was terminated and I will be doing business with somebody else. So I hope this inspires you to maybe take a little bit of some charge in your life, to give yourself more credit for the courageous actions you are already taken, but also to see that you are in a constant state of growth, and just to give yourself some grace. Hope you enjoyed this episode here. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Share it with somebody who may benefit from it. And if you have any questions or comments, you can send them to me via my website at donnyraus.com, DonnyRaus.com. And as always, how we get this, this podcast to more listeners is by hitting that subscribe button. So please hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, and that is it. I hope you enjoyed this episode here, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And remember, you only get one life. Live fully, live passionately, and most of all, live now. God bless you, and